Chapter 2588. Fengjiu smiled. Mayor, there's no need to be angry. It's time for me to leave. She cupped her hands and bowed, then walked out. Ah, young Master Feng, wait, I'll see you out. The mayor glared at his son fiercely, then quickly followed her out. Ling Tianyu didn't understand her father's actions. She didn't understand why her father, who had always been arrogant, would take a liking to such a brat. He even treated him as an important guest and allowed him to enter. Outside the gates of the mayor's manor, Fengjiu turned around and smiled. Mayor, there's no need to see me out. Goodbye. All right, if there's a chance in the future, I'll invite young Master Feng to the manor as a guest. At that time, you must stay for a few days, the mayor said. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and replied, Of course. She then turned around and left. Watching her leave, until her figure disappeared from his sight, he sighed softly and shook his head. He turned around and was about to go back. Who knew that when he turned around, he would see his son standing behind him, looking at him. Father, why do you like that brat so much? What do you like about him? Ling Tianyu asked, her eyes fixed on her father's face, not missing a single expression. Being asked by his son like this, the mayor looked at him unhappily and said, Do you think I'm like you? Seeing a handsome young man, you want to order him around? I have my reasons for treating him differently. You just have to remember what I told you. Don't think too much about other things. Seeing that her father was about to walk inside, Ling Tianyu pulled him back and stared at him, saying, Father, I know you're hiding something from me. If you don't tell me, then I'll have to find that brat and ask him. Hearing this, the mayor's face was slightly stunned, then he glared at him. You dare? Father, do you think I won't dare? You said it yourself, I've done a lot of bad things on a daily basis. I don't care about one more. He said coldly, as if he didn't care. You. The city lord was so angry that his face turned ashen. He stared at him for a long time without saying a word. After a long time, he exhaled softly, suppressed the anger in his heart, and said in a deep voice, Come with me to the study. Hearing that, Ling Tianyu followed him inside. Fengjiu left the city lord's mansion and walked around the street. He bought some things and had a simple meal at a street corner before coming to an inn. However, when she arrived at the entrance of the inn, she paused for a moment and turned her head slightly to glance behind her before walking in. Someone was following her. She had sensed it the moment she left the city lord's mansion. When she first arrived here, other than having conflicts with Ling Tianyu, she didn't have any grudges with anyone else. Could it be that the person following her was sent by Ling Tianyu? Judging from the mayor's attitude and words, he probably wouldn't let anyone follow her. Then, it was very likely that it was the mayor's son, Ling Tianyu. The corners of her lips curled up, revealing a smile. He was someone who even swore an oath to heaven and earth. If he really did something, even if she didn't do anything, the rules of heaven and earth would automatically punish him. Therefore, she wasn't worried that the person following her would do anything to her. Chapter 2589. Sir, you'll have to pay half of the room fee before you can go upstairs, the innkeeper said to Fengjiu with a smile. How much? Fengjiu took out the gold coins, but the innkeeper waved his hand with a smile. Not gold coins, but crystals. You can only use crystals here. Things like gold coins can only be used outside of Penglai Immortal Island. Here, you can only use crystals. Crystals were far more precious than gold coins. Furthermore, crystals contained spiritual energy that could aid in cultivation. She didn't expect that this place would only use crystals. No one wanted gold coins. Fengjiu smiled and took out the crystals, handing them to the innkeeper. Is this enough? It's enough, it's enough. Sir, please follow me. The innkeeper was also a celestial sage cultivator. He personally led Fengjiu to the second floor. As Fengjiu walked up the stairs, she looked at the people on the first floor of the inn. She saw that they were all cultivators of the fairy realm, and the celestial saint realm. When she thought about the records of this place, she knew that these people had all consumed strange fruits and medicines to reach this level of strength. They could only reach this level for the rest of their lives, and would never be able to advance any further. "Sir, this is your room. If you need anything, you can call for the waiter," the innkeeper said and bowed before leaving. Fengjiu entered the room and closed the door. After locking the door, she went to rest on the bed in the inner room. She had been reading the books in the city lord's mansion for the past 3 days without sleeping. Right now, she just wanted to have a good sleep. However, because she knew that someone was watching her from outside, she summoned Tun Yun in order to relax and sleep. "Tun Yun, lie on the side of the bed and watch over me. I'll sleep for a while to recover my energy," she said as she patted Tun Yun's head. "All right, master, don't worry and sleep. I'll watch over you," Tun Yun replied and lay down on the side of the bed. His eyes were focused on the movements outside. Fengjiu, who was lying on the bed, gradually relaxed. Sleepiness overtook her and she fell into a deep sleep. With Tun Yun watching over her, she felt at ease and slept soundly. At this moment, she didn't know that after Ling Tianyu heard her father's words, her mind was in a mess. She felt that it was somewhat unbelievable. A woman? That Fengjiu is actually a woman? He muttered under his breath. When he suddenly heard this news, he only felt shame, anger, and disbelief. He, the dignified Castellan Manor's young Castellan, losing to that brat was one thing, but now, he was being told that the brat was actually a woman? He actually lost to a woman? He had originally promised his father that he would not leave the Fu, but now he had the urge to leave the Fu and see where that Fengjiu had run off to. Thus, he took Sui with him, and the two of them left the residence and headed outside. After searching through the inns one by one, he still couldn't find the place where Fengjiu was staying. He couldn't help but think, could he have left? However, after thinking about it, he felt that it wasn't quite possible. Thus, he said to Zui, "Go to the inn in front and ask around. I'll drink some tea here first." He gestured for Zui to go to the inn in front and ask about Fengjiu. Meanwhile, he sat down at a roadside stall and asked the old man at the tea stall to serve him a cup of tea. However, he was a little absent-minded as he drank the tea. How could such a carefree and unrestrained man be a woman? His face was handsome and devilishly charming. A person like that should be a man. How could he be a woman? Chapter 2590. Zui, who was dressed in a guard's uniform, walked back quickly and said to Ling Tianyu, who was drinking tea, "Master, the innkeeper of the inn in front said that a handsome young man in red came to stay, and he hasn't come out since he entered the inn." Hearing this, Ling Tianyu paused for a moment with the teacup in her hand and looked forward. Was he in the inn in front? He had found him, but what should he do after finding him? Ask her why she was a woman? Fight with her again? He didn't know that the other party was a woman, but now that he knew it was a woman, how could he, a man, fight with a woman? At this moment, he had forgotten that a man like him couldn't beat a woman like her. Seeing his master holding the teacup and thinking about something, he thought for a moment and asked, "Master, do you want to go in and find him?" "Why do you want to find him?" Ling Tianyu snorted. "Father told me not to make trouble for her again. Since she is staying in the inn, let's forget about it." Hearing this, Zui was stunned for a moment. He didn't understand what his master meant. After coming out of the mansion, they searched several streets and asked in inns one by one. In the end, they found him but didn't go in? He thought that his master was looking for Fengjiu for something. But it seemed that, "Master, are we going back now? The mayor said that we can't stay out for too long." As soon as he finished speaking, he saw his master's sharp eyes looking at him, and he couldn't help but lower his head. Ling Tianyu sat there and drank tea, but her eyes fell on the door of the inn. However, as time went by, she didn't see Fengjiu step out of the inn until noon. However, when he was ready to go back to the mansion, He glanced around the inn again and noticed that there were a few people like him who had been sitting there since the morning, and they were also staring at the inn from time to time. His heart skipped a beat, and he looked at those people quietly. He found that they were all at the level of Sage Celestial, and among them, there was one whose cultivation he couldn't see through. With his strength at the peak of the Celestial Sage realm, he couldn't see through the cultivation base of those who were stronger than him. These people were all unfamiliar faces, so he couldn't help but pay extra attention to them. Zhuyi! He called out and whispered a few words in Zhuyi's ear. After hearing his words, Zhuyi was slightly startled. He followed his gaze and finally nodded. Yes, I will do it right away. He was about to leave, but he ordered another pot of tea to continue drinking. As he looked at the entrance of the inn, he didn't forget to pay attention to the cultivators until Zhuyi returned. Master! Zhuyi came to his side and said in a low voice, "The guards at the gate said that those people entered the city yesterday morning. After entering the city, they asked around for information about Fengjiu." Hearing this, Ling Tianyu frowned slightly and put down the teacup in his hand. He stood up and said in a deep voice, "Bill." As soon as he finished speaking, he walked towards the inn. After Zhuyi paid a piece of crystal stone, he quickly followed behind him and entered the inn together. "Which room is Fengjiu in?" Ling Tianyu looked at Zhuyi and asked. "The first room on the left on the second floor." As soon as he finished speaking, his master had already walked upstairs. Chapter 2591. In the room, Tun Yun, who was originally lying on the floor, stood up and patted Fengjiu on the bed with its paw. "Master, someone is calling you from outside." Fengjiu woke up when she heard the voice outside. She opened her eyes and yawned as she got up from the bed. After putting Tun Yun back into her space, she tidied her robes and walked out. When the door opened, the first thing he saw was Ling Tianyu's face. She lazily glanced at him with her sleepy eyes and asked, "What's the matter?" She leaned against the door and stood there lazily with her arms crossed in front of her chest. Ling Tianyu looked at the beautiful face in front of him. Looking at her sleepy face and the laziness in her actions, his eyes couldn't help but flicker. For a moment, he was absent-minded and didn't say a word for a long time. Zhuyi, who was following beside him, saw that his master was absent-minded while looking at a man. He quietly reached out and tugged at his robes, calling out in a low voice, "Master! What are you doing?" Ling Tianyu glared at him unhappily. Seeing that he was hinting at Fengjiu in front of him with his eyes, he finally came back to his senses. Ahem. He coughed lightly and looked at Fengjiu, who was standing by the door and didn't seem to want to invite him in. He said, "I have something to tell you." As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to walk in. Unexpectedly, Fengjiu, who was standing diagonally, reached out and stopped him. "If you have something to say it here." Hearing that, Ling Tianyu was slightly annoyed. "Let's talk inside." Seeing that, Fengjiu took a step back and reached out to close the door. Seeing that, Ling Tianyu hurriedly reached out and stopped him. She said angrily, "Don't be so ungrateful. I'm here to tell you something." "Say it." Seeing her blocking the door, Ling Tianyu took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "I'm here to tell you that you're being watched. There are several cultivators outside who have been waiting for an entire day. Even I can't see through one of them." He paused and glanced at her. Seeing her raise her eyebrows and look at him with surprise, he said, "Don't think too much. I still don't like you, but my father told me not to cause trouble for you. The reason I came to tell you is to let you know that those people were not sent by me, so you won't suspect me later." "So it wasn't you who sent them?" She nodded, her expression showing that she understood. Hearing this, he glared at her angrily. "You already knew? You suspect that I did it?" Fengjiu smiled and said, "I knew that I was being watched from the moment I left your house. I didn't offend anyone here, so the first person I suspected was you. There's nothing wrong with that. With that, she smiled and said, however, now that I know that it wasn't you who sent people to watch me, I have to think about who else would be watching me. Okay, that's it. As soon as he finished speaking, the door slammed shut, leaving Ling Tianyu outside. Outside the room, Ling Tianyu saw the door slammed shut in front of him, and his face turned pale. He clenched his fists and suppressed the rising anger in his heart. After taking a deep breath, he cursed in a low voice, "You don't know what's good for you." Seeing his master turn around and leave angrily, Zhuo hurriedly followed. After being busy for an entire day, he had no idea what his master was doing. Even if someone was watching Fengjiu, it was none of his business. Chapter 2592. Was it not sent by him? Then, who could it be? She pondered in her heart and faintly had a suspect. Was it the person who came for the Chaos Cyan Lotus? But didn't the Penglai Immortal Island appear on the sea only once every half a month? If it was those people, how did they come here? Or were they originally from this place? After drinking 2 cups of water, she opened the door and called out, "Waiter, come up." "Okay." The waiter downstairs answered and walked quickly to Fengjiu's room. "Child, what can I do for you?" "Prepare some food for me. If there's any famous food nearby, then buy some for me." While speaking, she handed over some spar to him. "Okay, I'll do it right away." The waiter took the crystal stones and went downstairs with a smile. He told the shopkeeper to let the kitchen prepare some food and then went out to buy some things. After the kitchen sent a few dishes upstairs, the waiter who went out to buy also came back. He entered the room and then came to the table. He smiled and said to Fengjiu, "Child, this is the roast chicken and crispy suckling pig of the Baiwei building, the rainbow cake of the Yunxiang building, the radish cake of the East Street and—" He put the things he bought on the table one by one from the space ring and introduced them to Fengjiu. Until the table was full, he said, "Child, there are 2 crystal stones left." He handed them back to Fengjiu. Fengjiu smiled and said, "I'll give the rest to you. You can leave now. Don't come up without my order." "Yes, thank you, child." The waiter responded with a smile, and then went out and closed the door. Looking at the table full of food, she put away the things that could be kept into her space, and left some food for herself. When she was full, she opened a small crack in the window at the back. Seeing that there was still someone staring at her, she called the waiter in. "Child, what else can I do for you?" Fengjiu looked at the waiter in front of him and smiled. "Nothing. I just want to borrow your clothes." As soon as he said that, he reached out and hit the waiter's acupoint. In the waiter's astonished and frightened eyes, he took off his clothes and put them on himself. After that, he did some simple treatment and then said to the waiter who was still, "I put the rest on the table. I'll give it to the shopkeeper later. As for your acupoints, they will be unlocked in 4 hours." Little Fool stood there, unable to move or speak. Seeing the red-clothed young man put on his clothes and leave, he let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he just took off his clothes. As the sky darkened, 4 hours later, Little Fool walked out of the room in his undergarments with a gloomy expression. Yi Jie and the other cultivators suddenly stood up. "Quickly let go, let go!" The waiter shouted in panic, "Shopkeeper, shopkeeper, save me!" "Shut up!" The cultivator who grabbed the waiter's clothes shouted with a gloomy face. He lifted the waiter off the ground and asked with a gloomy voice, "Where is the person in the room?" Chapter 2593. Hearing this, the cultivators thought of the figure in the waiter's uniform that walked past them 4 hours ago, and their faces couldn't help but tighten. "Damn it!" He stretched out his hand and threw his waiter out, smashing him to the first floor. The waiter cried out in pain and scrambled to his feet to hide behind the shopkeeper. 2 tables on the first floor were smashed. Seeing the murderous aura of these people, the shopkeeper didn't dare to pursue the matter. He just protected the waiter and watched them leave. After they left, he turned around and asked the waiter what was going on. The cultivators who left the inn gathered together, and there were actually more than 10 of them. Ling Tianyu only saw a few people outside, and didn't know that there were people behind her and on the first floor of the inn. They left 4 hours ago, so they should be far away by now. Where should we go to find them? A cultivator asked, and his gaze fell on the leader. The leader's face was gloomy, and he stared at the people coming and going on the street, and said in a cold voice, "It wasn't easy for us to find her here, but now we have no clues. We can only go back and wait for news." Feng Jiu, who had already left the city, was walking on the mountain road. She had no idea that those people were no longer chasing after her. She was still wearing the waiter's clothes. Her originally beautiful face had already been disguised into the ordinary face she used most in the past. Her aura was also restrained and she looked silly. People who didn't know her would only think that she was a teenager from the countryside or somewhere else when looking at her. However, very few youths would walk at night, especially on this mountain path where there were no villages or shops. The sound of horses galloping could be heard from the mountain path, and Feng Jiu stopped to look. She saw 2 carriages, one in front of the other, and there were lights in front of the carriages. They didn't look like lights, but more like luminous pearls. Seeing this, she retreated to the side of the mountain path, and let the carriages pass. A carriage traveling at night, there should be something urgent. Otherwise, it would be normal for carriages to rest at night, and very few carriages would travel at night. Although there was a distance between them, because there was no one else on the road, she could faintly hear the sounds of laughter coming from the carriages. There seemed to be old people, as well as young men and women. Look, there's a young man outside. A young girl's charming voice rang out with a smile and curiosity. She looked at the young man standing by the roadside in the night. Feng Jiu looked up and saw the girl in the pink dress poking her head out of the carriage window. She blinked her limpid eyes and looked at him curiously. What's so strange about that? After all, not everyone can sit in a beast carriage like us. A young man's voice sounded, and there was a hint of arrogance in his tone. Grandfather, that young man is resting on the grass by the side of the road. We haven't had much rest along the way, so why don't we get off the carriage and walk around? I was tired after sitting in the carriage for a whole day. Moreover, I saw that the stars in the night sky were so bright. I want to go down and take a look. The young girl's charming voice came from the carriage and faintly fell into Feng Jiu's ears. Feng Jiu sat down on a grassy slope. He took out a small tent from his space and set it up. Then, like a wisp of smoke, he slipped inside and isolated himself from the whistling night wind outside. Chapter 2594. She sat cross-legged in the small tent and took out some pastries to eat as she looked at the starry sky outside. The stars twinkled and shone brightly. However, when she looked at the moon and stars in the sky, she thought of the people in 100 River City. Now that she was here alone, she didn't know when she would return and she didn't know how they were doing. Inexplicably, her originally good mood gradually sank. However, when a figure arrived outside her tent and waved, she gathered her thoughts and raised her head to look at the pretty girl in the pink dress. "Ai, why are you here alone? Aren't you afraid? I heard from my grandfather that there are ferocious beasts roaming around here. How dare you rest here alone?" The girl asked curiously. Just as she was about to move closer, she was pulled back by a young man behind her. "Little sister, why are you moving so close? I don't know where this person came from. He's so dirty, don't get too close." The young man was dressed in fine clothes and had the appearance of a noble young master. However, at this moment, he was looking at Feng Jiu, who was sitting in the tent with disdain. Feng Jiu ate some pastries and looked at them. He then looked away and looked at the stars in the sky, ignoring them. They were just 2 brats. It would be boring to talk too much. "You too, don't go too far." A gentle female voice sounded, attracting Feng Jiu's attention. He saw a beautiful woman dressed in simple but elegant clothes. She was wearing a white dress and was standing next to the carriage with a smile. Next to the beautiful woman was an imposing middle-aged man. When the middle-aged man heard the beautiful woman's words, he called out to the girl and the young man, "Your mother told you not to go too far. Did you hear? Come back quickly." The girl quickly ran back and affectionately held the beautiful woman's hand as she said, "Mother, there's a young man about the same age as Big Brother. He set up that tent and wants to rest here. Mother, why isn't he afraid of being eaten by a wild beast?" Hearing this, the beautiful woman and the middle-aged man looked at each other and smiled. The middle-aged man's deep voice carried a smile as he said, "I only know that if you're here alone, you'll definitely be eaten by a wild beast." "Father," the young girl called out reluctantly. Another old man came down from the carriage in front. He stroked his beard and looked up at the night sky. He smiled and said, "Tonight's weather is really good. The bright moon shines on the road and the cool breeze caresses my face. If we are not in a hurry to return to the main house, we can rest here for the night." "Grandpa, can't we rest here for the night? We're all so tired from rushing all the way." The young girl pouted. "Hee, I'll be fine after resting for a while. We've already wasted quite a bit of time on the road. We can't let the main family wait for us, so as to avoid the dissatisfaction of some people in the family. But I don't want to go back too early. If I go back too early, the people in the clan will make Father go to the heart of the island. I heard from Big Brother that that place is very dangerous. Little girl, you can't mention this again, especially when you're in front of the main house," the old man instructed. The young girl spat out a mouthful of saliva and made a face. She pulled her mother towards the small tent and said, "Mother, come. Let's go talk to that little brother and ask him why he's so bold. I dare to be alone in the wild." Chapter 2595. Fengjiu sat in the small tent eating pastries. When she heard the young girl's words, her eyes flashed. The heart of the island? The heart of the Pring Lai Immortal Island? Her heart skipped a beat, and the speed of her eating slowed down. The beautiful woman was pulled to the front of the small tent by the young girl. When she saw the thin and weak figure sitting in the small tent, she couldn't help but be startled. She heard from her daughter that it was a young boy, but she didn't expect the young boy to be so thin and small. Seeing the young boy, who was about the same age as her son and daughter, sitting there eating alone, she couldn't help but feel motherly. "Why are you here by yourself? How could your family be at ease letting you travel alone?" the beautiful woman asked in a gentle voice. Her gentle gaze fell on Fengjiu's face. Fengjiu took a bite of the pastries. Her clear eyes blinked and there was a simple and honest expression between her brows. She tilted her head slightly and looked at her without saying a word. "My mother is asking you a question. Why aren't you answering? Could it be that you're mute?" The young boy shouted and glanced at Fengjiu impatiently. Once he said those words, the others were all startled. "Mute?" The beautiful woman and her husband looked at each other. Finally, she looked at Fengjiu and asked, "Are you unable to speak?" Fengjiu thought for a moment and nodded. She held the pastries with both hands and continued to eat. Her actions and appearance were like a child who had been starving for a long time. "Husband, look at this child." The beautiful woman looked at her husband and hesitated. "Madam, you're not thinking of picking him up and bringing him along, are you? This is a human, not a small animal." The man shook his head and smiled with a helpless expression. "No, I'm thinking that our carriage also has space. If this child is going the same way as us, why don't we bring him along so that he won't encounter any danger on the road?" the beautiful woman said gently. Seeing this, the middle-aged man didn't speak. He only stared at Fengjiu and sized him up. "Do you want to come with us? We have a carriage that can bring you along. In any case, the road is still far away. You can come with us." The young girl squatted in front of Fengjiu and looked at her with a smile. Hearing this, Fengjiu was slightly startled. She blinked her clear and harmless eyes at the people in front of her. finally thought and nodded. At the same time, she extended her hand and handed a pastry to the young girl to show her friendliness. For me to eat? What kind of pastry is this? The young girl was not wary of others. Seeing Feng Jiu pass the pastry to her, she picked it up and was about to eat it when the middle-aged man beside her coughed softly. Little Shur, have you forgotten what father said to you again? When you're outside, don't simply eat things given by strangers. The middle-aged man said calmly. Hearing this, she said, He's too. He's. What's more, he doesn't know us and won't poison us. What's there to be afraid of? As he spoke, he took a bite of the pastry. It's delicious. She smiled at her parents and said to Fengjiu, Thank you. My name is Xieshursi. The poem at the front is the poem of poetry and the poem at the back is the poem of yearning. My family calls me Little Shur. What's your name? Just call him Mute. What's the point of calling him that? The young man kicked the dirt on the ground and snorted. He looked at Fengjiu with disdain. Chapter 2596. Fengjiu came out from the tent and put away the small tent. The young girl beside him was chattering non-stop. Beside the carriage, the old man saw the two of them coming over and looked towards the figure who was putting away the small tent. He asked, You want to bring that young man with you? The middle-aged man looked back and said, That young man looks very ordinary. He has a simple and honest face. I can see that he is just an ordinary child with a little bit of cultivation. He is also a mute who can't speak. In addition, Xiao Shur likes him very much, so I thought that it would be fine to bring him along. Let him sit outside the carriage with the coachman and let him leave when we reach the city. A child who didn't seem to be a threat. Since his wife and daughter wanted to help him, he would agree to it. When the old man heard this, he nodded and said, Let them enter the carriage. With that, he entered the carriage first. The beautiful woman and the middle-aged man sat in the back carriage, while the old man and the siblings sat in the front carriage. Fengjiu stood to the side, hesitating about which carriage to sit in. Then, he saw the young girl stretch her head out and waved at him. Sit here. Come quickly. He paused for a moment, then walked into the carriage and sat beside the coachman. However, the moment he sat down, he was pulled into the carriage by the young girl. Little sister, why did you pull him in? He looks so dirty. The young man frowned and avoided Fengjiu, not wanting to touch him. Yutong, how can you speak like that? The old man who had his eyes closed opened his eyes when he heard his word. He frowned as he looked at the young man. His old voice was filled with vigor as he said, Although the strong are respected in this world, words and deeds are also very important. Today, you are a descendant of the Xie family, so your status is respected. But if you weren't a descendant of the Xie family and were just a commoner, what would happen? When the young man heard the old man's words, his face turned red and he lowered his head. Grandfather, grandfather doesn't want to scold you. I just want to teach you how to conduct yourself. You are still young now, but in a few years, if your words and deeds are still like this, people will only look down on you. You must remember, if you want people to respect you, you must respect others first. The old man's voice was deep as he lectured. At the same time, his gaze turned to Fengjiu. When Fengjiu heard the old man's words, he couldn't help but be surprised. In this world where the strong were respected, it was rare for the old man to teach his children like this. But no matter how strong one's strength, one's heart. Moreover, if one were to speak with disdain, contempt, and disdain, then how could such a person obtain the respect of others? Yes. Big brother, you should listen to Grandpa's words more. Grandpa's words make the most sense. The girl said with a smile. Is it natural or acquired? The old man looked at Fengjiu and asked. When she met the old man's gaze, she paused for a moment. She saw a small tea table in the middle of the carriage, and there was a pot of tea on it. She dipped her finger into the tea and wrote a few words on the table, telling him that she couldn't speak because of a recent injury to her throat and that she would recover in a few days. Seeing this, the old man nodded and said, "Since we have met, it must be fate. Let's keep them company for the rest of the journey." Fengjiu looked at the two of them and nodded. Chapter 2597. The girl blinked her eyes and asked Fengjiu with a smile. Seeing this, Fengjiu wrote Fengjiu on the table. "Fengjiu? Your name is so simple, but I don't think I've heard of the surname Feng." The girl looked at the old man and asked, "Grandpa, have you heard of the surname Feng?" "The surname Feng is not common." The old man looked at Fengjiu and asked, "Where are you from? Where are you going?" Hearing this, Fengjiu wrote the words, "Vagrant cultivator," on the table. "You call yourself a vagrant cultivator? You're even weaker than me." Sha Yutong glanced at Fengjiu and whispered, "Vagrant, vagrant, vagrant, vagrant. No wonder he sleeps in a small tent on the side of the road." Fengjiu, who was sitting in the carriage with them, gradually fell asleep during the questions and answers. She leaned against the corner of the carriage and fell into a deep sleep, her whole body slanting over. As the night deepened, the brother and sister also fell asleep. Only the old man opened his eyes after they fell asleep, and his wise eyes fell on Feng Nine. After chatting for a while and observing him, he found that this youth was ordinary and unremarkable. Since he wasn't a threat to them, he didn't pay too much attention to him. He leaned against the carriage and fell asleep. Fengjiu closed his eyes and breathed deeply, but he was not asleep. She was thinking in her heart. First, she was unfamiliar with this place, and it would not be easy to find the heart of the island. Second, she happened to meet the people of the Xie family. It seemed that they were also going to the heart of the island. Instead of looking for it herself, it was better to follow them first and find an opportunity to go there. In particular, the ladder of immortality was so mysterious. She also wanted to take advantage of this period of time to find out more about the ladder of immortality and learn more about this place called Penglai. Therefore, she thought it would be a good choice to follow the people of the Xie family. More importantly, she felt that the people of the Xie family were very pleasing to the eye. The spirit beast carriage ran at an extremely fast speed, and the sound of its hooves was like a lullaby in the night, causing the people in the carriage to fall asleep as they listened to the sound of the horse hooves. The night passed peacefully. However, when it was almost dawn, the spirit beast carriage suddenly stopped as if it was hit by something. Because of the inertia, the people in the carriage also swooped out. "What happened?" Xie Shirsi exclaimed. After stabilizing herself, she stuck her head out of the window. However, when Fengjiu raised his eyes and glanced over, he saw a flash of cold light. He immediately stretched out his hand and pulled her back. "Be careful!" the old man exclaimed in a low voice. His heart seemed to be in his throat at that moment. When he saw the sharp sword cutting through the window with his own eyes, he couldn't help but sweat in his heart. If it weren't for Fengjiu pulling her back, his granddaughter would have been beheaded. Xie Shirsi, who fell in the carriage, turned pale and asked, "What's wrong? I just felt like my body was trapped and I couldn't move," she said with lingering fear and patted her chest. Sha Yutong also came to his senses and said, "Listen, why does it seem that there is a fight outside?" Chapter 2598. Grandpa, the coachman was killed, Sha Yutong said with an ugly face. He stood up and jumped out of the carriage, ready to join the battle. "Come back! Don't run around!" The old man's face sank and he shouted. Seeing that his grandson had jumped out of the carriage, he pulled Xie Shirsi out of the carriage. Seeing this, Fengjiu, who was still in the carriage, also got out of the carriage. He glanced around and saw that there were more than 20 black-robed men who attacked the Xie family, while there were only a dozen shadow guards who followed and protected them in the dark. Although their strength was almost the same, The situation was not optimistic because there were so many of them. In particular, other than the hidden guards, the only ones who were relatively strong in the two carriages were the old man and the middle-aged man. Now, the old man had to protect his grandsons, and the middle-aged man had to protect his wife, who didn't have any fighting strength. Seeing that the beautiful woman was hiding beside the middle-aged man, she was obviously afraid but still didn't say a word. She couldn't help being curious. The Xie family sounded like a big family. Why did they marry a woman who had no cultivation? It was strange. Hiss! Sha Yutong couldn't dodge in time. His arm was cut by the sword chi of a black-robed man's long sword. Blood suddenly oozed out, which made him instinctively exclaim and stagger back. However, at this time, the black-robed man's long sword went straight up and aimed at Sha Yutong's life. It seemed that he was ready to kill him. Yutong! Be careful, Yutong. The old man couldn't go forward because he was protecting his granddaughter, and the middle-aged man couldn't leave because he was protecting his beautiful wife. Seeing that Sha Yutong was about to be killed, the two men's eyes turned red and their killing intent burst out. The long swords were even more fierce. Both of them wanted to rush forward to save him. However, at this time, Fengjiu, who was standing beside the carriage, moved quickly and pulled Sha Yutong's collar, pulling him behind him. The sword also stabbed down at the same time. The fierce sword chi whistled past, which made Sha Yutong's face change slightly and his movements become stiff. After seeing that he had dodged the fatal blow, the Xie family members heaved a sigh of relief. They tried their best to gather together, protecting the weak behind them. Fengjiu pulled Sha Yutong to avoid the attacks of those people. Because Sha Yutong was frightened, his reaction was half a beat slower. Even when the knife in the hand of a man in black fell between the two of them were separated by a small distance. Fengjiu's eyes flashed when he saw the two black-clothed men approaching. If she had used her full strength, she would have been able to dodge them easily. She could have even killed the two men in black. However, she would have exposed her true strength. If she had exposed her true strength, it would have been difficult for her to approach the Xie clan. Thinking of this, her heart moved slightly. When she saw the two men in black coming, she rushed forward, hugged Sha Yutong, pushed him down, and rolled to the side of the old man. However, when the two of them were rolling away, Fengjiu saw a cold light refracting towards him. He was originally prepared to avoid it, but when he got closer, he changed his mind and raised his hand to block it. Chapter 2599. Fengjiu covered his wound with one hand and endured the pain as he stood up. At this moment, the old man pushed Xie Shirsi to her side. Then, in a flash, he rushed out and killed the two black-robed men in an instant. With the deaths of those people, the number of black-robed men gradually decreased. The remaining few saw that the situation was not good and immediately retreated. As those people retreated, the surroundings regained its tranquility. However, whether it was the corpses on the ground or the smell of blood in the air, it was impossible to ignore. Tang how are you? Are you hurt? The beautiful woman hurriedly helped her son up from the ground and looked at him from head to toe. Mother, Big Brother's arm was scratched. It's not a big deal, Xie Shirsi said and looked at Fengjiu. But Fengjiu seems to be injured quite badly. This wound is still bleeding. Seeing this, the beautiful woman hurriedly went forward. Come, let me apply some medicine for you and bandage your wound. She took out some medicine and hurriedly applied it on Fengjiu's wound while thanking her. If it wasn't for me, my family's Tang might not have survived. Thank you for saving him. You are his savior. Brother, come, let me apply medicine for your wound. As Xie Shirsi spoke, she came to her brother's side and checked his injured arm. After cleaning it, she sprinkled some medicine on it and bandaged it. Seeing that the situation had stabilized, the old man and the middle-aged man stood together and whispered something to each other while the shadow guards cleaned up the corpses on the ground. It's been a good journey. It's been peaceful and nothing has happened. I didn't expect them to be lying in ambush here. If there were more people, I'm afraid we wouldn't be able to deal with them," the middle-aged man said in a low voice as he looked at his family and the injured youth. "It's all thanks to him. If he hadn't pulled Yutong back, Yutong would be a corpse now." The middle-aged man sighed. He was injured in order to save Yutong. The old man also looked at Fengjiu with a hint of doubt in his eyes. "Just now I saw that his footwork was very strange. He moved his feet and his figure dashed out. His speed was very fast. It doesn't seem to match his strength." Hearing this, the middle-aged man glanced at Fengjiu before shifting his gaze away. Looking at the wives and children surrounding the young man, he couldn't help but reveal a serious expression. "Father, we haven't even reached the main family and it's already like this. If we reach the main family, will this kind of thing happen every 2 or 3 days? You also know that they are not good at scheming. I am really worried that they will cause some trouble in the main house." "Don't spout nonsense," the old man said in a deep voice. "Until now, there is no evidence to say that it was done by the main family. We can't simply suspect. Who else could it be other than them? If it weren't for the people from the main house telling us to move to the main house, we wouldn't have encountered these things on the way. Alright, we'll talk about this later. Let's take a look at that young man first," the old man said as he walked towards Fengjiu. "How is it? Is the injury serious?" the old man asked as he looked at the young man's face while he endured the pain. "It's not light, but I've already applied medicine. It's just that it won't heal for a few days," the beautiful woman said as she looked at the young man's bandaged arm and sighed in relief. "Yutong, what are you still standing there for? Come and thank Xiaojiu. If it weren't for her, you would have been dead." Chapter 2600. "Thank you," Sha Yutong said awkwardly in a low voice. As soon as he finished speaking, he ran to his mother's side. Feng Nine smiled and lowered her head to look at the wound that she had bandaged. "Burn the corpses of our people and bring their ashes back. When the time comes, send them back to their families," the old man instructed the secret guards. He looked at the corpses and sighed softly in his heart. The fire rose in the night sky, illuminating half of the sky. A gust of wind blew, and there was a foul smell in the air. Those secret guards did as he said and cremated the bodies. After picking up the ashes, they took out jars from their qiankuan bags and stored them inside. Fengjiu saw that they were skilled and prepared. Obviously, it was not the first time that they had done such a thing. It seemed that they had dealt with the dead secret guards in this way before. Compared with burying them, it was better to burn them like this to prevent future troubles. After all, no one knew if there would be any ferocious beasts digging up the bodies buried in the ground and gnawing them. If they burned the bodies and took the ashes back to their families, no one would worship them after they died. Let's go back first," the old man said and motioned for them to get on the beast carriage. The guards who had been hiding in the dark also showed up and followed the carriage. They continued to move forward. As the sky gradually brightened, the carriage gradually approached the next town. The old man frowned slightly, looked at Fengjiu sitting beside him, and asked, "Xiaojiu, what are you going to do next? Do you have relatives in the city?" Hearing this, Fengjiu shook his head. Seeing this, the old man pondered. His eyes fell on his injured arm. After thinking for a while, he said, "We are going back to the main family this time. We will settle down in the main family of the Xie family. If you come with us, I'm afraid." Hearing this, Sha Yutong glanced at Fengjiu, who was sitting beside him with his head down, and said, "Grandpa, let him wear the clothes of a secret guard and pretend to be a secret guard in our mansion. Otherwise, let him be my manservant and follow me around." Hearing this, Fengjiu looked up at him with some surprise. "What are you looking at? I just don't want to owe you a favor. Don't you have nowhere else to go? Since that's the case, you can stay by my side as my manservant. I can't promise you anything else, but I'll definitely provide you with 3 meals." The old man thought for a moment and looked at Fengjiu. If you really have nowhere else to go, then stay by Yutang's side. This young man seemed to have a calmer temperament than Yutang, and there was a simple and honest look between his brows. With his ability to read people, he didn't seem to be someone with bad intentions. When Fengjiu heard the old man's words, he smiled and nodded. He then wrote the word, "Thank you," on the table. "That's great. Then you can play with me in the future," Xie said happily. "Let me tell you about our Xie clan. After arriving at the Xie clan, you should stay by Yutang's side. Don't be impulsive. After all, we're not direct descendants in a large clan, so it's hard for us to have a say." Fengjiu nodded and listened as the old man told the three of them about the things they needed to pay attention to when they arrived at the Xie residence. Chapter 2601. The old man shook his head and smiled. "We are all members of the Xie family. If the main family asks us to go back, of course we have to go back. What's more, it's a great thing in the eyes of others. After all, the collateral relatives have to rely on the main family. And after we go to the main family, we also have an independent courtyard. That's not as good as our original home," Shai Yutang said and stopped talking. He lowered his head and thought about something. "Grandpa, we are collateral relatives of the Xie family. Will the people of the main family look down on us? Will they bully us?" Xie asked worriedly. Hearing this, the old man said, "No, Grandpa said that we are all family. What's more, we have to be reasonable outside. We are not allowed to fight among our own family. You can rest assured." "But what if they bully us?" she still asked worriedly. Then come and tell Grandpa. Grandpa will deal with it. However, you are not young anymore. In the past, we protected you too well at home. You have to learn to get along with others appropriately," the old man said meaningfully. The carriage ran on the road. Because he didn't rest all night, Fengjiu fell asleep leaning on the carriage. After a long time, the carriage stopped and the voice of the shadow guard outside came. "Old master, we are at the gate of the main family." The old man in the carriage got off first, and then Fengjiu and others followed. The middle-aged man and the beautiful woman in the carriage behind also came to the old man's side. "Knock on the door." The old man motioned a shadow guard to come forward. "Yes." The shadow guard answered. After knocking on the door, he reported the family's name. When the old man who opened the door heard that they were collateral relatives of the Xie family, he took a look outside and then invited them in. At the same time, he asked someone to hurry inside to report. As soon as the master of the Xie family heard the servant's report, he called all the people in the mansion and went to the front hall together. In the front hall, the old man and others were sitting. Fengjiu stood behind Shai Yutang and stood quietly with slightly lowered eyes. It was not until he heard the laughter outside that he raised his eyes slightly to look. "Oh, as soon as I heard that Uncle Tokugawa was here, I came here immediately." A middle-aged man in an embroidered jade robe walked in with a smile on his face. His gaze landed on the old man. "Uncle Tokugawa, thank you for not seeing you for a while." He bowed to the old man. "Patriarch." The old man stood up after he came in. At this time, he also bowed to him. Then, he said to the middle-aged man and the beautiful woman, "Come and greet the family head. We're all family, so there's no need for formalities. This must be little brother Yan and sister-in-law," Xie family head said with a smile. His gaze landed on the middle-aged man in front of him and the beautiful woman beside him. "Greetings, Patriarch." The two of them bowed. Xie Yan smiled and said, "This is my wife. These two are my children." "Master." Shai Yutang and Xie also stepped forward and saluted. "What are your names?" Xie family head asked with a smile, his gaze falling on the young man and the young girl. "Master, my name is Shai Yutang." "My name is Xie. It's sure from poetry and C from yearning," she said with a smile. Oh well, it's the first time we meet. Come on, this is a gift for you too. He fumbled in his sleeve, and took out 2 jade pendants and handed them to them. Chapter 2602. Since the family head gave it to you, you should take it, the old man said with a smile. Hearing this, the 2 of them were overjoyed and smiled. Thank you, family head. They happily received the jade and thanked him. Fengjiu, who was standing at the side, only took a glance and could tell that the 2 jade pendants were magic weapons. Furthermore, the quality of the jade was not bad. She thought to herself, the Xie family head is quite generous, especially to the collateral family members. However, her gaze did not change as she glanced at the people who came in later. Seeing that each of them had extraordinary strength, she could not help but be slightly moved. The people from the Xie family seemed to be quite strong. From the looks of it, the Xie family should be an aristocratic family with 100 years of history. However, looking at the expressions of these people, some were disapproving and some were contemptuous. It seemed that the Xie family was not a very peaceful place. Come over. Let me introduce you. The Xie family head turned to look at the people behind him and asked them to come forward. Thus, he introduced them to each other. Fengjiu stood quietly at the side, listening and watching. After both sides had greeted each other, the Xie family head called for the housekeeper. Uncle Tokugawa, my father is currently in seclusion and has not come out yet. However, he has instructed us to give you a mansion in the south for you to live in. Knowing that you will be coming in a few days, I have already ordered people to clean it up. You can live there now. When the Xie family head said this, many people's expressions changed slightly. A mansion in the south? It seemed that the family head and the old master still valued this collateral family very much. To give them a mansion in the south showed how much they valued them. Since that was the case, they had to build a good relationship with them in the future. After all, from what they saw today, the old master's strength was so strong that none of the people present could compare to him. That was fine, as he was from the same generation as the old master. However, his son's strength was also above them and could not be ignored. The Xie family head smiled and said, as for the people in the mansion, let Brother Yen find time to go to the slave market and buy some back. If you need anything in the future, feel free to ask. Thank you, family head. The old man replied and thanked him. How about this? All of you must be tired after rushing all the way back. I'll let the steward bring sister-in-law and Yutong back to the residence to rest first. As for Uncle Tokugawa and little brother Yen, please sit for a while. I still have some things to discuss with you. All right. The 2 of them replied. After informing the beautiful woman, they had them follow the housekeeper back. Fengjiu left with them. When they were outside, they could still faintly hear the sound of people talking. Fengjiu followed the housekeeper and arrived at another mansion. What surprised him was that the Xie clan had given a separate mansion to the branch family members. It was just that this mansion was adjacent to the Xie clan's main residence. Moreover, it had everything they needed, and the design of the courtyard was very pleasing to the eye. With just one look, she knew that this branch family was highly regarded by the main family. Although the people in the hall were strong, they were not as strong as the 2 branch family heads here. It was only natural that they were highly regarded. However, according to the patriarch's words, there were still a few elders who had yet to arrive. Naturally, there was no way to know the strength of those people. Chapter 2603. Yes. This place is so beautiful, even more beautiful than our original home. Xie Shirsi also said excitedly, looking around. The beautiful woman smiled gently and took them to look around. After familiarizing them with the environment, she let them choose a courtyard. Xiaojiu, you can stay in the same courtyard as Yutong. The beautiful woman looked at Fengjiu and said. Fengjiu nodded and agreed. Shai Yutong just glanced at Fengjiu and did not object. He just said, Mother, Although our mansion is big, we still need to buy servants. When are we going to buy some servants? Let's talk about it after we settle down. You're all tired today. Let's have a rest first, she said softly and let them go back to their courtyards. Then she went to the main courtyard. About an hour later, the old man and Xie Yan also came back. The old man also chose a courtyard to stay in, while the middle-aged man went to the main courtyard. After a rest, Xie Yan called them all together and said to them, "I'll take you out to eat today. When we come back, we'll go to the slave market and buy some servants." "Will Grandpa go?" Xie Shirsi asked. "Your grandpa wants to have a rest. He said not to disturb him. When we come back, we'll bring him some food," Xie Yan said and took them to the carriage out of the door. After dinner in the restaurant, Xie Yan took them to the slave market. He smiled and said to his son and daughter, "Today, I'll leave the work of choosing servants to you. It's a test of your eyesight. It's not difficult." Shai Yutong raised his chin slightly and walked forward, looking at the cages of slaves. After a long time, he frowned and came back. "Father, these people have cultivation. And the ones in the cages look very ferocious. I don't know where they came from." "The ones in the cages are those with higher cultivations. Those are usually chosen as guards, but they are enough to protect our family, so there is no need for more. As for the servants, we need to find these stewards and have them bring some out for us to choose from." As he spoke, he pointed at one of the stewards. The beautiful woman had a smile on her face. She didn't say anything and just watched quietly. After Shai Yutong stepped forward and told the steward that he wanted to buy some servants, the steward recruited people and brought out 50 men and women. Most of these people were between 13 and 20 years old. Feng Jiu glanced at them and saw that these people only had a small cultivation base. Their clothes were tattered and they stood there with their heads lowered. "Look up," Shai Yutong shouted, and then looked at his sister. "Sister, you choose first." I'll pick first?" Xie Shirsi was stunned for a moment and turned to look at her mother. Although her mother had taught her how to pick people, she had never done it herself. "Go. Try it. If it doesn't work, I'll change it for you," the beautiful woman said and encouraged her to go forward. Thus, Xie Shirsi walked forward and looked at the 10 people in the first row one by one. Finally, she picked out 2 adorable twins from the first row. "Mother, I want these 2. They are twins and look exactly the same. In the future, let them stay by my side and serve me." She looked back at her mother with a smile. Chapter 2604. The beautiful woman glanced at the 2 girls, smiled, and turned to look at Feng Jiu, asking, "Xiao Jiu, what do you think of these 2 girls?" Hearing this, Xie Yan looked at his wife with some surprise. He didn't expect that she would ask Feng Jiu's opinion. Not only were Xie Yu and Xie Yan stunned, but even Feng Jiu was also stunned. She didn't hide the surprise in her eyes as she looked at the beautiful woman, as if she was surprised that she would ask her. However, she glanced at the twins and nodded. Xie Shirsi's eyesight was not bad. These 2 little girls were very perceptive. Although they were happy when Xie Shirsi chose them, they also looked at the beautiful woman with apprehension. Obviously, they knew that the beautiful woman would be the one to make the final decision. Moreover, the cultivation of these 2 girls was not strong or weak among these people. They were above average. In addition, their appearance was pleasing, so they could be bought and placed by Xie Shirsi's side. Seeing Feng Jiu nod, the beautiful woman smiled softly and said to her daughter, "Since Xiao Jiu said that they are good, then these 2. You can also choose some rough maids." Xie Shirsi didn't understand why her mother asked Feng Jiu, but seeing that her mother agreed, she smiled happily and let the 2 girls stand out first. "Thank you, madam." The 2 little girls hurriedly bowed and thanked her with joy, and then stood aside respectfully. Xie Shirsi picked a dozen more girls and asked them to stand out, then asked her mother, "What about these? Are they good?" The beautiful woman looked at Feng Jiu again. Although she didn't speak, she smiled. Fengjiu looked at the smile, couldn't help but smile and lower her head, feeling depressed. Why did she keep looking at her? She wouldn't want her to choose again, right? Just as she was thinking, she heard her gentle voice, "Xiao Jiu, help Xiao Shi look at these people." As soon as these words came out, Xie Yan's eyes moved slightly. The first time was fine, but there was a second time? This Fengjiu was just a simple and honest boy. What did he have that made his wife treat him differently? He couldn't help but feel curious, and his gaze fell on Fengjiu. Shai Yu and his cousin also felt strange. They looked at their parents and then looked at Fengjiu without speaking. Fengjiu's scalp went numb from the countless pairs of eyes that were filled with curiosity, inquiry, and doubt. She raised her head and glanced at the beautiful woman. "Go ahead." The beautiful woman smiled gently and motioned for Fengjiu to step forward to choose. Thus, Fengjiu had no choice but to step forward and push a few of the pretty girls back. Finally, only 10 people were left out of the 17 or 18 people. "Those people are all very good-looking. Why not?" Xie Shirsi asked doubtfully. Her mother said that the servants were also the face of the master, so she had to choose the good-looking ones. She had chosen in this direction, but who would have thought that the best-looking ones would be pushed back by Fengjiu? Fengjiu scratched his head with his hand and revealed a simple and honest smile. He chuckled in his heart, "Little girl, these people haven't even entered the house yet, but they are already throwing coquettish glances at me shyly. What will happen after they enter the house? And I'll listen to Xiaojiu." The beautiful woman nodded with a smile and looked at her son. "Yutong, you choose some." Chapter 2605. Fengjiu's mouth twitched when she heard this. What's wrong with this family? Xie Yan also smiled when he saw this. Well, I think Xiaojiu has chosen well. Let him choose the rest. He looked at the 12 people on the side and said to Fengjiu, "There are 12 people here. Pick 8 more. Make 20 people." As soon as he finished speaking, he had the steward bring out another batch of slaves. However, in this batch of slaves, other than men and women, there were also middle-aged men. Therefore, in this batch of slaves, other than the word mixed, some of them had higher cultivation. Fengjiu sighed softly in her heart. She knew that the beautiful woman might want to test her, or to see what kind of person she was. Although she could pretend to be ignorant and choose at will, she didn't. Thinking that she would stay in their family for a while, she also knew that it was useless to keep hiding. What's more, her throat would be better in a few days and she would have to speak. At that time, she couldn't pretend to be mute and say nothing. Therefore, after the steward changed a batch of slaves, she walked past those people and looked at them one by one. Finally, she picked 4 women and 4 men from the 50 people. Out of the 4 women she had picked out, 2 of them were around 16 or 18 years old. She had prepared them for the beautiful woman, and the other 2 were around 30 or 40 years old. She had written down some questions on a piece of paper that she had prepared beforehand. Therefore, these 2 were going to be the kitchen maids. As for the other 4 men, one was about the same age as Shai Yutong and was going to be his personal servant. The other 2 were about 15 or 16 years old and were going to be errand boys. The last one was a middle-aged man. This person's strength was not the highest among these people, but he exuded integrity between his eyebrows. She was going to use this person as their steward. She felt that this person should have the ability. After the final selection, she also wrote down the arrangements of these people on paper and showed them to the beautiful woman. Since the beautiful woman wanted to see her ability, she naturally had to show it. What's more, it was just the ability to recognize people, which was easy for her. When the couple saw the Fengjiu's arrangement, their hearts were slightly moved. The couple looked at each other and smiled. In the end, the beautiful woman said, "That's all. You guys wait for me in the carriage. I'll go take care of the things behind." Xie Yan smiled. After speaking to them, he asked the steward to bring those people over. At the same time, he asked the steward to handle the handover. Mother, are the people Xiao Jiu picked good? Xie Shirsi hugged her mother's arm and asked curiously. Even Sha Yutong pricked up his ears and listened. Feng Jiu, who was sitting outside the carriage, only smiled when he heard their conversation. In the carriage, the beautiful woman smiled gently. Yes, Xiao Jiu has good taste. The people she picked are all suitable. Why don't I see how good his vision is? Sha Yutong snorted. But in his heart, he agreed. At least, when he saw those girls who winked at him, he wanted to punch their eyes swollen. Fortunately, those girls were not selected to enter the mansion. The beautiful woman smiled and did not say much. She just said, "Let's go to the clothing store and make some clothes for the people in the mansion." Chapter 2606. Who said that Xiao Jiu should be with you? The beautiful woman smiled and looked at Feng Jiu, saying, "You will be the chief steward in the mansion in the future. You will be in charge of everything in the mansion." Hearing this, Feng Jiu was stunned. He quickly waved his hand, indicating that he couldn't do it. Sha Yutong stared at him. "Chief steward? Him?" His eyes fell on Feng Jiu, but he couldn't see what was so good about him. Xie Shirsi blinked and looked at Feng Jiu, and then said to her mother, "But Grandpa said that Xiao Jiu could be a manservant with my brother." "That's because there was no manservant in the mansion before. Now it's different," she said softly. When Xie Yin came back, she said to them, "Well, I'll take them back first. If you want to buy anything else, go ahead." "Well, my husband, you can go back first. We'll be home later," the beautiful woman said and put down the curtain. Feng Jiu was sitting on the edge of the carriage. Now seeing this, he nodded to Xie Yin and drove the carriage to the largest cloth store in the city. In front of the cloth store, Feng Jiu stopped the carriage and opened the curtain to let them get down. The first one to get down was Sha Yutong. He jumped down directly and stood beside the carriage to look around. Xie Shirsi also jumped out of the carriage with one hand, just like Sha Yutong. The beautiful woman behind her frowned slightly. "Xiao Shi, you are a girl. You should pay attention to your behavior." "My brother also got down like this." She looked back with a smile and said, looking at the cloth store with surprise and joy, "So many beautiful fabrics, wow! There are even clothes made." As soon as her voice fell, she ran directly in without waiting for them. "This crazy girl." The beautiful woman helplessly shook her head. Just as she was about to get off the carriage, she saw Feng Jiu reaching out his hand to help her down. She looked at Feng Jiu and gently smiled before reaching out to hold his hand. However, when she held Feng Jiu's hand, her heart slightly trembled. She couldn't help but look at the hand she was holding, and her gaze slightly shifted. After getting off the carriage, the beautiful woman said to Feng Jiu, "You can stop the carriage here. You can also come in and choose." Feng Jiu nodded and followed her in. "Mother, this cloth is so beautiful. I want to use it to make clothes." Xie Shirsi held her mother's hand and said, "If you like it, then buy it." As the beautiful woman spoke, she let them choose. She and Feng Jiu went to the side and picked some cloth for the servants. Then she looked at Feng Jiu and asked, "Xiao Jiu, which one do you like?" Feng Jiu looked around and then went to the side to pick 2 sets of cyan clothes. He pointed at the clothes for the beautiful woman to see. "And this style is not bad. Since you like cyan, then I'll pick some more and have them make more clothes for you." As the beautiful woman spoke, she picked a few more pieces. In the end, she had the servants bring the selected pieces to the counter and let them make clothes according to the size. Feng Jiu looked at her buying so much and couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. He felt that it was the same everywhere. When this woman bought things, it was scary. "Mother, this material is very beautiful. If I make clothes for you, it will definitely look even better." Xie Shirsi carried a piece of silk cloth over. It was a piece of sky blue material with floats on it. Whether it was the texture or the quality, it looked incomparable. Chapter 2607. Shopkeeper, I want that piece of ice silk satin. A cold and arrogant female voice called out. Feng Jiu and the rest turned around to look. They saw a beautiful woman dressed in a white veil. She was accompanied by several bodyguards. Judging from their attire and appearance, they should be members of an aristocratic family. Xie Shirsi saw the woman's gaze fall on the cloth she was hugging. She snorted and said, "What ice silk satin? This is the cloth I picked out. I want to make clothes for my mother." As she spoke, she hugged the cloth tightly as if she was afraid it would be snatched away. The woman in white looked at Xie Shirsi with contempt. Her arrogant gaze swept over the beautiful woman and Feng Jiu. She said, "You don't even know what ice silk satin is, what's the use of buying it?" She walked in step by step until she was in front of Xie Shirsi. She reached out to touch the cloth and said in a soft and arrogant voice, "Ice silk satin is woven from the silk of ice silkworms. When you wear it, flames won't be able to get close to you. Especially in the summer, it will give you a cold feeling." She paused, raised her chin slightly, and glanced at them with arrogance. "This kind of material is not something that anyone can afford. It's none of your business. In any case, I saw it first. My family can afford it." Xie Shirsi was dissatisfied with being looked down upon. She angrily glared at the woman and ran to the counter with the cloth in her arms. "Shopkeeper, I want to buy this as well. I want it to be the most beautiful dress for my mother." When the beautiful woman heard these words, a gentle and happy smile appeared on her face. She rubbed Xie Shirsi's head with a doting expression on her face. After which, she looked towards the white-clothed lady and asked in a warm voice, "Miss, may I know if you have reserved this cloth in advance?" The woman in white was startled. She moved her mouth and looked at the beautiful woman. She only said, "I've already come to look for it several times." "Then did you pay a deposit?" The beautiful woman looked at the shopkeeper and asked. "This," the shopkeeper hesitated for a moment. He looked at the beautiful woman and continued, "No, it's just that Miss Ruan has been here several times. I also told her that there would be a bolt of material coming over in the next 2 days. This material just arrived today, so Madame took a fancy to it." The material was good, but there was only one piece. The Ruan family was a large aristocratic family in the city. The madam had also said that the clothes would be sent to the Xie residence after they were done. The Xie residence was also a large aristocratic family in the city. He couldn't afford to offend either party. "So you're saying that this material hasn't been ordered yet? Since we've taken a fancy to it, we should naturally buy it first. Shopkeeper, don't you think this is reasonable?" The beautiful woman's voice was gentle like a spring breeze, causing the mood of those who heard it to change. Feng Jiu watched from the side and thought to himself, "No wonder Xie Yan still married her even though she can't cultivate. It seems that she is indeed extraordinary. You dare to steal from me? Do you know who I am?" The woman in white was only 16 or 17 years old. How could she be a match for the beautiful woman? She couldn't keep her cool. The beautiful woman turned around and looked at the woman in white with a gentle smile. She said softly, "I haven't asked for Mrs. Name? I'm the third miss of the Ruan family's main branch. I want to buy this material for my mother as a birthday gift." Chapter 2608. Third Miss Ruan, everything is first come first serve. Moreover, I have the ability to buy this material. Why don't you pick something else? I think that since this cloth shop is so big, there must be a lot of good materials. Shopkeeper, don't you think so?" She looked at the shopkeeper and asked. Yes. There are a few bolts of good materials. Third Miss Ruan, how about I show them to you?" The shopkeeper asked carefully. "I only want ice silk satin," the white-clothed woman said as she continued to stare at the material. Hearing this, the shopkeeper was a bit embarrassed. This is the only piece left. There is no more in the entire city." Even if we transfer the goods from other places, it will take at least half a month to get the good. The beautiful woman silently paid the bill and told the shopkeeper to make the clothes with the cloth. At this time, the white-clothed woman saw this and angrily left with a flick of her sleeve. Seeing the white-clothed woman leave with the guards, the beautiful woman smiled and asked, "Shopkeeper, is third Miss Ruan's mother the head of the Ruan family, Fong Yurong?" "Yes, that is third Miss Ruan's mother. I heard that in a few days it will be her birthday. Third Miss Ruan has already come here several times. Normally, people can't afford ice silk satin. I didn't expect that Madame would take a fancy to it." The shopkeeper shook his head and smiled. He was also quite helpless. Hearing this, the beautiful woman smiled and said, "Shopkeeper, you just said that there are a few pieces of good materials? Let me see them." Okay. The shopkeeper quickly took out a few pieces of material and placed them in front of her. "Madam, please take a look. These are all top-quality materials. It is very comfortable to wear. Moreover, there is only one bolt of this material. Even if you wear it out, no one will be able to find the same." The beautiful woman's hand touched the bolts of material and finally picked out a dark gold one. She said to the shopkeeper, "Put this bolt and this ice silk satin in a beautiful box and send it to the Ruan family's head of the Ruan family, Fong Yurong." Hearing this, Xie cried out, "Mother, why are you giving such good materials to the head of the Ruan family? We don't even know her." Xia Yutang was also a little confused. His mother was not the kind of person who would make friends with others. Although it was just 2 bolts of cloth, her behavior was somewhat puzzling. Feng Jiu lowered his eyes and stood there quietly, as if he was not surprised by the beautiful woman's arrangement. At this moment, the shopkeeper also asked with some doubt, "Madam, you said that you want to send this to the Ruan family for the mistress of the Ruan family? Not bad." The beautiful woman smiled. "She and I are old acquaintances. We haven't seen each other for many years. I didn't expect to meet her daughter here. Since it's her birthday in a few days, I'll trouble the shopkeeper to send this over." Xie was a little dumbfounded. Her mother was actually an old acquaintance of the Ruan family's mistress? Thus, after settling the matter, they also brought some ready-made clothes back first. The group then boarded the carriage and went to other places. After buying some things, they went to the Xie residence. When they arrived at the residence, Feng Jiu took her new clothes and took a bath first. After changing into the new clothes, she looked even neater than before. Chapter 2609. Ruan Mansion. Looking at the 2 pieces of cloth in front of her, and thinking of what the person who sent the cloth just said, Fong Yurong looked slightly surprised and whispered softly, "It's her?" She leaned on the table and pondered for a while, then said to the people around her, "Go and call the 3rd Mississippi, and why is this ice silk satin in our house? Mother? Where did it come from?" As soon as she entered the door, she saw the 2 pieces of cloth on the table, one of which was the one she saw outside today. "I ask you, did you meet a beautiful woman outside today?" Fong Yurong asked slowly, her eyes falling on her daughter. "How do you know?" 3rd Miss Ruan was stunned, looked at the cloth, and then suddenly realized, "I know, is it because that woman didn't dare to take it, so she sent this cloth here? Don't talk nonsense." She scolded in a low voice, "Tell me, what does that woman look like? Does she have no cultivation?" She felt strange about her mother's attitude. Although she was puzzled, she still said, "She looks beautiful, but I don't think she is as beautiful as Mother. As for cultivation, she does have no cultivation. She looks like an ordinary beautiful woman." At that time, there was a boy and a girl next to her, who were her children. Hearing this, she pondered and said to a middle-aged woman beside her, "Ask someone to find out where she lives. In addition, prepare an invitation. Invite her and her children to my birthday banquet." "Yes." The middle-aged woman on the side responded and then retreated. "Mother, why do you want to invite them? I don't like that woman." Third Miss Ruan said unhappily. Hearing this, she frowned and said, "You are the third Miss of the Ruan family. You should pay attention to your words and deeds. What should be said and what should not be said. You have to have a sense of propriety. Go. Don't go out these days. Stay at home and help to prepare for the banquet." Yes. Seeing that her mother's face had darkened, she responded, bowed, and retreated. At night, Fengjiu was lying in bed, thinking about what happened today. She felt that this beautiful woman was somewhat unfathomable. Lying in bed, she released her divine sense and felt that Shai Yutong, who was in the same courtyard, had fallen asleep. She quietly got up, changed into a black dress, and took advantage of the night to sneak out. She avoided some of the hidden guards in the manor, and prepared to go to Manor Head Xie's residence to look for clues about the stairway to immortality. When she passed by the old man's courtyard, she faintly heard the sound of a conversation. Thus, she restrained her aura and quietly went to the roof. Through a small gap, she saw the two people sitting and talking. It was Xie Yan and his father. "Now that I've arrived, I've become the third elder of the main family, and the southern courtyard has been given to us. In the eyes of others, this is an extremely good thing, but the more it is like this, the more worried I am." The old man sighed softly and shook his head. "I know what father is worried about, and I also know why the patriarch and the others value our family so much. There is of the heavens of the of our family, there is of the of the family of the family of the family. Of the family, there are of the family of the family." Chapter 26:10. His voice paused and he let out a deep breath. He knew very well where this treatment came from. If something were to happen to him, the status of his father, wife, and children in the Xie family would plummet and no one would be able to protect them. The stairway of immortality is like a stairway to heaven and a stairway to hell. Those who can climb it are immortals. Those who can't climb it are reduced to dust. Sigh. The old man sighed. Even so, there are still people who want to try the stairway of immortality every year. However, very few succeed. "I'm afraid I won't be able to stay here for much longer. In about 7 to 8 months, the stairway of immortality will open. When that time comes, I'll have to go there and wait," Xie Yan said. He thought about his wife and children and his heart sank. "When the time comes, try it. If you can't do it, hurry up and come down. Don't let the stairway of immortality force you down. You should know that if you come down, you can preserve your strength. However, if the stairway of immortality force you down, it's hard to say." "I know." He nodded and thought of something. "Father, what do you think of Fengjiu?" "Fengjiu? What's wrong? Why do you ask this?" The old man looked at him in surprise. Fengjiu, who was lying on the roof, also raised his eyebrows and listened to the conversation below. "It's like this today." He told him about the matter of letting Fengjiu choose the person. Finally, he said, "Originally, I thought that Fengjiu was a simple and honest young man. However, after seeing him today, I feel that he is somewhat different." Hearing this, the old man stroked his beard and thought for a while, then said, "If it's really as you say, then he is indeed somewhat different. However, one thing is for sure. This young man has no ill intentions towards our clan. Furthermore, we only met him on the way here. Even if he has some secrets, it's normal. As long as he doesn't do anything to harm our clan, it's fine." Fengjiu listened and quietly left. Just like how he came, he avoided the hidden guards and returned to his room. Originally, she wanted to go to the main house to find out more information. However, it seemed that there was no need for that. As long as she followed Xie Yan, she would naturally be able to reach the stairway of immortality. The next day, the gatekeeper received the invitation from the Ruan family. The invitation was handed to the beautiful woman by Fengjiu. "Mother, who made this post? What do you do?" Xie Shirsi held a fruit in her hand and ate it while looking at the post opened by her mother. The beautiful woman glanced at it and smiled. It's an invitation from the mistress of the Ruan family, inviting us to her birthday banquet in 2 days. Is father going too? She asked curiously. Your father won't be going. This is just a banquet for some of the female members of the family. You can make friends with some of the children of the aristocratic families in the city, the beautiful woman said as she put away the invitation. Will Xiaoju be there too? Xie Shirsi thought for a moment and asked, will the man and woman be there together? No, we'll be seated separately. As the beautiful woman spoke, she looked at Feng Jiu and asked, Xiaojiu, is your throat better? I've asked the kitchen to prepare something to soothe your throat. You can go and eat it later. Hearing this, Feng Jiu paused for a moment and then nodded. The beautiful woman looked at him and smiled, then warmly said, when the banquet starts, you should come with us. Xiao Shi, I'll take care of the female guests. You'll have to take care of the Jade Hall. Chapter 26:11. The beautiful woman shook her head and said, you have to learn to restrain your temper. It's one thing at home. If you always act like this outside, it's easy to get into trouble. Mother, I'm here to find Fengjiu. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Shai Yutong said and said to Fengjiu beside him, you go out with me. Then he strode out. Fengjiu saluted to the beautiful woman, and then followed Shai Yutong out. When they came outside, Shai Yutong glanced back and said in a low voice, the children of the main family asked me to learn from each other. You go with me. Don't let my parents know. Hearing this, Fengjiu glanced at him, took out a pen and paper and wrote a line, telling him that she would go to the kitchen first. It's not dinner time yet. What are you going to do in the kitchen? Shai Yutong frowned and said, okay, you go. I'll wait for you at the gate. Hurry up. After watching him leave, Fengjiu stepped to the kitchen. The beautiful woman said that there was something in the kitchen to moisten her throat, so she went to have a look first. All the way to the kitchen, the maidservants in the mansion all bent their knees and saluted, respectfully calling the chief steward. Yes, the beautiful woman had told everyone in the mansion that she was the chief steward of the mansion, and she was in charge of the big and small things in the mansion. In fact, she was in charge of the affairs of the servants in the mansion, and as for other things, the beautiful woman was in charge of herself. She couldn't understand why the beautiful woman valued her so much. In her view, what she showed was also normal, and there was nothing eye-catching. Instead, she couldn't see through the beautiful woman. She went to the kitchen, and Shai Yutong waited for Fengjiu at the gate outside. He looked back from time to time, but he didn't see Fengjiu's figure. He was a little impatient. When he wanted someone to go to the kitchen to have a look, he saw the cyan figure coming out from inside. Hurry up, I'm waiting for you. He waved and strode to the main house of the Xie family. Feng Nine followed him into the main house, and went all the way to the martial arts field of the main house. Before they got close, they saw more than a dozen teenagers of the same age as Shai Yutong standing there. They were talking in groups of 3 or 4. When they saw Shai Yutong coming, they all looked at him and looked him up and down. Are you Shai Yutong, who moved into the mansion in the south courtyard these 2 days? A young man asked. His gaze swept up and down as he said, I thought he was an outstanding young man, but it turns out that he's only SOSO. Who are you? Shai Yutong glared at the young man in front of him with displeasure. My grandfather is the grand elder of the Xie family. The young man raised his chin arrogantly. Who are you? It turns out to be the grandson of the elder. Shai Yutong said, no longer looking at him. Instead, he stepped forward and said, Didn't you say that you wanted to compete with me? I'm here. The youths looked at each other, and one of them stepped forward with a smile. The clan forbids infighting, so we can only spar with each other and not injure each other. I know. Shai Yutong nodded. Chapter 26:12. Before the teenager could speak, Shai Yutong said, He is my follower. I asked him to come with me and let him watch over there. Hearing this, the teenager looked away and no longer paid attention to Fengjiu. Instead, he asked all the teenagers to come together and discuss the rules of the competition. Fengjiu looked at them. Seeing that these teenagers were all in high spirits and their faces were full of excitement, she couldn't help raising the corners of her mouth slightly. At this age, they had the protection of their families and could indeed do whatever they wanted without any worries. Although she was also quite carefree, there were too many enemies and too many troubles. It had been a long time since she was like these teenagers who could do whatever they wanted. She found a place to sit down, took out a fruit from her sleeve, and ate it while watching the teenagers compete in the field. Yes, it was indeed as they said. It was only a spar, and no one was injured. After eating the fruit, she was a little bored. After all, from her point of view, they were just like children playing tricks. There was nothing interesting about it. She didn't know why Sha Yutong asked her to come here. Seeing that there was nothing for her to do here, she wanted to find a place to relieve herself. When she was about to leave, she caught a glimpse of a cold light from the corner of her eye. She immediately stopped and looked at the cold light. Sha Yutong and a teenager were in the field, while the others were watching outside. One of the teenagers held a small flying knife in his hand under his sleeve. The flying knife shone a cold light under the sun, which was discovered by her. She glanced at the teenager with the flying knife and remembered that he was the grandson of the first elder. However, what did he want to do with the flying knife in this competition? Just as he was thinking, he saw a sinister smile at the corner of his mouth. His vicious eyes stared at Sha Yutong, who was fighting with the teenager. The next moment, he suddenly took a step back and injected spiritual power into his hand to shoot the flying knife out while no one was paying attention. The sudden flying knife attacked Sha Yutong, which shocked the surrounding teenagers. They whispered, "Why is there a flying knife? Sha Yutong, get out of the way!" Sha Yutong was repelling the teenager. When he turned around, he saw a flying knife coming. He instinctively wanted to avoid it, but his reaction speed was not as fast as the flying knife. Hiss! Dodge! Seeing that the flying knife was aimed at Sha Yutong's life, the surrounding teenagers were all scared. They just wanted to learn from each other, but they didn't expect that someone would secretly attack him. If Sha Yutong was shot by the flying knife and died here, they were afraid that none of them could escape the responsibility. Seeing the flying knife flying towards Sha Yutong's life gate, the grandson of the first elder couldn't help but worry. In fact, he didn't want to kill Sha Yutong. He just wanted to teach him a lesson and let him taste the bitterness. The flying knife just now was not aimed at Sha Yutong's vital point, but moved as Sha Yutong dodged. At present, seeing the situation out of control, he was so shocked that he couldn't say a word. Fengjiu glanced at those people, and his gaze swept over the face of the youth who was retreating. Immediately, he condensed spiritual energy on his finger and flicked it out, knocking the flying knife to the ground. Clang! Chapter 26:13. Sha Yutong swallowed, and a drop of cold sweat on his forehead dripped down his cheek. His hands trembled slightly, and his eyes moved to the ground. The next moment, his fear was replaced by anger. He picked up the flying knife, held it in his hand, and stared at the crowd. Who wants to plot against me? You'd better stand up by yourself, otherwise, I must make a fuss about it to the head of the family. Hearing this, the grandson of the first elder turned pale and his body trembled slightly. He was just impulsive and didn't think about the consequences. Now when he heard that Sha Yutong was going to find the head of the family, he suddenly panicked. If his grandfather knew it, he would be killed. It's not me. It's not me either. Me neither. I'm not standing in that direction either. The teenagers around waved their hands one by one and said that they didn't do it. Who is it? Who on earth did such a wicked and cowardly thing? Sha Yutong asked angrily. His eyes swept over the crowd, and suddenly fell on the pale grandson of the first elder. He strode forward and said, "Is it you? Did you do it?" "No, it's not me, no, no." He stepped back, waving his hands and saying, but he didn't dare to look at him. His face was filled with panic, but the surrounding youths vaguely understood what was going on. Fengjiu watched from the side. After glancing at the teenagers, his eyes fell on Shai Yutong again. It could only be said that the boy was lucky. If he hadn't pulled her here, and she happened to be here, he would have been in trouble. She watched Shai Yutong questioning there. She walked forward step by step, and the boy stepped back step by step. Finally, he fell to the ground with his legs weak, and admitted it with a pale face. She raised her eyebrows in surprise, because she saw that Shai Yutong just scolded the man and warned him. He asked the man to apologize to him and promise that he would not do such a thing again in the future, and then he returned the knife to him. Why did the flying knife suddenly fall just now? Seeing that Shai Yutong didn't pursue the boy, others also began to talk about it. "Yes, I was scared to death just now. Yutong, when the flying knife shot at you, you were also scared, right? I see that you're frozen there and can't move." Perhaps it was because of the way he handled things that all the youths accepted him. For a moment, all of them surrounded him, asking questions and laughing with their arms around his shoulders. "You don't say. Just now, the flying knife was about to stab me, but it seemed to have been knocked down by a stream of air." Shai Yutong recalled that when the flying knife hit him just now, there was a stream of air that knocked the flying knife down, and the stream of air brushed past his face, which made him feel it clearly. Airflow? How could this be? It should be that Xie Yuliang's hand strength wasn't strong enough, so the throwing knife fell halfway. How is that possible? It shouldn't be like that. Another person said. What else? There isn't even a single shadow guard here. Don't tell me that it was the shadow guard who struck the flying dagger. A youth said as he pointed at the empty space. Fengjiu listened to their conversation and turned to leave. Before she left, she drank several bowls of soup to soothe her throat and wanted to find a place to relieve herself. Chapter 26:14. Fengjiu stopped and looked back at him. He stretched out his hand and made a gesture. Regardless of whether he understood it or not, he left first. Yutong, what's that guy doing? Is he really your follower? He doesn't look like one. Yes. Also, what did he mean by gesturing with his hand? Can't he speak? Shai Yutong listened to their words and said, That guy is my follower. He can't speak because of his throat. He will be fine in a few days. That's all for today. I'll invite you to drink some other day. He patted the shoulders of several people around him, pushed them away and quickly chased after Fengjiu. You have to remember to invite us to drink some other day. The people at the back were still shouting and laughing happily. Only the grandson of the great elder had already left quietly. Where are you going? I haven't left yet. Shai Yutong said beside him. Fengjiu handed him the written words and walked back quickly without saying anything. Outhouse. Seeing these two words, Shai Yutong's mouth twitched. He didn't say anything and returned to the mansion with him. After arriving at the mansion, he said to him, Go ahead. Come back to the courtyard when you're done. I have something to ask you. He didn't see who threw the knife. Fengjiu had been watching on the side. He should have seen it, right? Shai Yutong didn't know that after he and Fengjiu left, a secret guard reported what happened in the martial arts field to the master. When Fengjiu returned to the courtyard, he saw Shai Yutong come forward and ask if she saw who did it. She naturally shook her head and told him that she didn't, and this matter was left unsettled. However, in the evening, the first elder came with his grandson, Xie Yuliang, with an apology gift. Therefore, this matter was known by the beautiful woman and Xie Yan. In the hall, it's all Yuliang's fault. After I brought him to apologize to Yutong, I will put him in purgatory for 3 months. The first elder looked at Xie Yan and said, I also brought some gifts for Yu Tang to calm his nerves. This time, no matter how you look at it, Yu Liang is in the wrong. I will definitely discipline him well. I only hope that our family will not be affected because of this." Hearing this, Xie Yan and his wife looked at each other. Finally, Xie Yan said, "If the first elder hadn't come, we wouldn't have known it. However, since Yutong didn't say anything, I think he has forgiven Yu Liang. The first elder doesn't have to worry about this matter." Good. That's good. I'm relieved to hear that." The first elder nodded with a smile, feeling relieved. After a while, he said, "Patriarch also asked me to ask on your behalf, who is that young man by Yu Tang's side?" Hearing this, the couple looked at each other and briefly explained the situation to the first elder. "Oh, I see." The first elder nodded suddenly. "In this case, I will take Yu Liang back first. The first elder has ordered him to go to purgatory tomorrow." Seeing this, after the first elder left, they called Yu Tong and asked him to understand. Finally, they asked him to leave first and called Fengjiu. Fengjiu, who entered the hall, looked at the two sitting above, walked forward and saluted. Then he looked up at them and asked silently. Chapter 26:15. Hearing this, Fengjiu shook his head. Seeing this, the two of them looked at each other and did not ask any more questions. "All right then. You can leave first." Thus, Fengjiu also turned and left. After she left, the two people in the hall began to whisper. According to First Elder, there were no shadow guards around at that time. The shadow guards closest to them were also unable to do that. At that time, only Fengjiu was standing not far away, so there were some suspicions. Xie Yan said, frowning slightly, "Condensing qi and being able to accurately deflect flying daggers, this person's strength is not weak. Since Yutong is fine, then it's fine. Even if we don't know who it is, we know that this person saved Yutong." The beautiful woman said softly, then said, "In 2 days I will be going to the Ruan family. The invitation says that I will be bringing along my son and daughter, so I was thinking of bringing Fengjiu with me. Let him look after Yutong and don't let him cause any trouble. And you can decide. I want to tell you that I am preparing to go into seclusion to cultivate. Now that father is also in seclusion, you have to take care of everyone in the residence." "I know, don't worry." The beautiful woman smiled and agreed. In the residence, Fengjiu narrowed his eyes on a large tree, listening to the faint whispers in his ears. It is said that the Treasure Exchange building in the city has all kinds of things. I really want to take a look. The Treasure Exchange building is not a place that ordinary people can enter. People of our status can't enter. And I also heard that the people who enter the Treasure Exchange building are all people of status. No matter how curious we are, we can't enter. Fengjiu opened his eyes on the tree. It was the voice of the shadow guards in the dark, talking about the Treasure Exchange building in the city. Treasure Exchange building? Since she had nothing to do here, she might as well take advantage of the night to go out and take a look. After making up her mind, she returned to her room to prepare some things. When night fell, she left the manor alone. After leaving the Xie estate, he found a place to change into a red robe and removed the disguise on his face. At the same time, he took out a mask and walked out from the shadows. After inquiring about the location of the Treasure Exchange Pavilion, he headed towards the Treasure Exchange Pavilion. There were rules outside the building. Fengjiu glanced at it and smiled. He took out a badge from his space and pinned it to his chest before stepping inside. Seeing the badge on Fengjiu's chest, the guards did not dare to stop her. On the contrary, they respectfully bowed and invited her in. Then, another person quickly entered the building. "Manager, there's an alchemist wearing the Alchemy Saint's badge outside." Here, there were very few people who could reach the Pill Saint level. They all knew the few Pill Saints in the city, but they had never seen the one who came tonight before. Hearing the guard's words, the steward knew that the visitor was an unfamiliar face, so he asked, "Have you invited him in? Where is he now?" "He's in the third room on the second floor. A servant girl is waiting on him. And you can leave. I'll go take a look." The steward waved his hand and stood up with his hands behind his back. He paused thoughtfully for a moment before walking out. Chapter 26:16. When the steward came in from outside, his gaze fell on the masked man dressed in red sitting at the table. Even though he had seen many outstanding men and women, when he saw this man whose face could not be seen, he was still stunned. He was not stunned by this man's appearance, but by the aura that emanated from this man's body. He just sat there, lazily supporting his head with one hand, and gently swirling the wine cup in his other hand. His red robe was dazzling, and his aura was even more breathtaking. Especially that mask, although his face could not be seen, it added a mysterious aura to him. His posture was leisurely, with a hint of indolence. That devilish and seductive aura was free and easy, and the wanton manner in which he moved made people unable to take their eyes off him. The bottomless eyes hidden under the mask, as well as the noble aura that was formed from it, made it impossible for the manager to have the slightest bit of carelessness in his actions or thoughts. After adjusting his emotions, he cupped his hands and bowed to the man in red, and respectfully asked, "I am the manager of this building, surnamed Lin. How should I address you?" "Ghost Doctor," Fengjiu said slowly. Hearing this, Manager Lin was slightly startled. Ghost Doctor? He seemed to have never heard of such a person as the Ghost Doctor. "How can I help you, Ghost Doctor?" Fengjiu took out a pill bottle and placed it on the table. "This is a pill that can allow a cultivator at the peak of the Sage Immortal stage to break through to the Immortal Emperor stage." Hearing this, Manager Lin's eyes narrowed, and his gaze fell on the small bottle on the table. A pill that could allow a cultivator at the peak of the Sage Immortal stage to break through to the Immortal Emperor stage? Was that possible? "Ghost Doctor, a pill that can allow a cultivator at the peak of the Sage Immortal stage to break through must be at least a 7th-tier pill. May I ask if this pill—" His gaze fell on Fengjiu, and his eyes were filled with curiosity. "Since your building is a place where treasures are exchanged, there should be an appraiser. Why don't you let him appraise it?" Fengjiu said casually, and continued to pour wine for himself. Hearing this, Steward Lin paused for a moment. After pondering for a moment, he said, "All right, then please take a seat, Ghost Doctor." He bowed and retreated, personally going to the appraiser's place in the building. In the middle of the night, several appraisers were drinking and chatting, talking about the treasures they had appraised in the past few days. At this moment, when they saw Steward Lin enter, they all stood up and bowed. Steward Lin. Although Steward Lin was only a steward, he was highly regarded by the owner of the building. Moreover, all the important matters in the building had to go through him. Therefore, although the appraisers had a high status, they still respected him. "You guys continue drinking. Elder Chun, come with me," Steward Lin said as he walked forward. Hearing this, everyone was slightly surprised and asked, "It's already so late, why does Steward Lin still look like he's in a hurry? Is something the matter?" "That's right. There's a saint alchemist in the building. However, he took out a level 7 pill and said it's a level 7 pill that can help a cultivator at the peak of the Immortal Sage realm break through. He's still waiting in the room. That's why I asked Old Chun to appraise it." Chapter 26:17. His voice paused and his eyelids lifted as he said, I reckon you've been tricked by someone." "That's right, in our city there are very few 7th-level medicinal pills that appear, so how could it be possible that someone brought a 7th-level medicinal pill over? He must be here to make fun of you." Another person laughed, pouring wine to drink, and said, "But this person's guts are quite big, not even taking a look at where this place is, actually daring to come and cause trouble. Hearing their words, that steward Lin shook his head, his face stern. No, I don't think that person is someone who would cause trouble. He glanced at the few of them. You haven't seen him before, but how could someone like him be an ordinary person? Who knows, what he brought over might really be a 7th-level medicinal pill. The few of them were startled, somewhat surprised that Steward Lin would actually think so highly of someone. They looked at each other, and put down the wine cups in their hands. Since that's the case, then let's all go over and take a look. We also want to see what kind of person can receive such an evaluation from Steward Lin. As they said that, they brushed their robes and stood up. Seeing 7 to 8 of them stand up, Steward Lin couldn't help but laugh bitterly. How about this? Let Elder Chun and Elder Ko follow me over. That person doesn't look like an ordinary person to me. Suddenly bringing so many of you over, I'm worried that he won't be happy. Among these 7 to 8 people, other than 2 who were top-grade appraisers of medicinal pills and medicines, the rest were all appraising treasures and treasures. They wouldn't be able to appraise medicinal pills over, so why not just let the 2 who understood medicinal pills go over, so as to avoid incurring the ghost doctor's displeasure? Hearing him say that, the few of them stared blankly for a moment, then laughed. All right, since you've already said so, then we won't go over. But, later on, you'll have to tell us the results of the appraisal. They laughed and sat back down. You guys continue. Don't drink too late. As Steward Lin spoke, he walked forward with the 2 appraisers. Once again returning to the side room, Steward Lin introduced them to Fengjiu. Esteemed ghost doctor, these 2 are our building's top pill appraisers. This is Elder Chen, and this is Elder Li. While Steward Lin was introducing them, the 2 old men were sizing up the masked man in red. When they saw the man in red, they finally understood why Steward Lin thought so highly of him. It had to be said that this person's temperament and aura alone were enough to shock others. Among the people who came and went from the Treasure Exchange Pavilion, they had never seen someone more outstanding than this person. Originally, when they came over, they didn't take this matter seriously. However, when they saw the person in front of them, they couldn't help but look forward to that medicinal pill. Could it really be a 7th-tier medicinal pill? Don't waste time, let's test it. Fengjiu gestured for them to quickly test the pill. The 2 of them walked up to the table and took out the tools used to examine the pills. When they opened the bottle cap of the pills, they could not help but look at each other as their hearts trembled. This medicinal fragrance. Chapter 26:18. 7 pill veins. This really is a level 7 pill. The 2 of them exclaimed in unison. They couldn't help but take a deep breath as they stared at the pill that was emitting a pure spiritual aura. Let me take a look. Old Chun suppressed the excitement in his heart. He picked up a pair of tweezers that were specially used to examine medicinal pills and carefully picked up the medicinal pill. He carefully looked at the medicinal pill on the pill, as well as its color and smell. From these, he was able to distinguish the grade of this medicinal pill. Based on the veins, scent, and color of this pill, we can determine that this is a level 7 upper-grade pill. The 2 of them exclaimed in unison. They looked at Fengjiu at the same time and asked in a trembling voice, "May I ask, where is the senior who refined this pill?" In order to refine a 7th-level medicinal pill, not only were the herbs extremely old and precious, but it also required exquisite alchemy skills and profound attainments in alchemy. Only by clearly knowing the medicinal properties of each pill could one accurately refine the pill. They had seen 7th-level medicinal pills before, but 7th-level high-grade medicinal pills were very rare. Hearing the 2 old men asking where the senior who refined this pill was, Gu Ruoyun raised her eyebrows. Fengjiu couldn't help but raise her eyebrows and said with a faint smile, "I refined this pill." As soon as she said this, the 2 old men looked at her in shock and disbelief. their faces full of disbelief. Fengjiu calmly retracted her gaze from the two old men and looked at Steward Lin, who was also in shock, and said, "I brought this pill to you because I want to use your treasure exchange house to make a deal." Hearing that it was a deal, Steward Lin calmed himself down and asked, "May I know what kind of deal the ghost doctor wants to make?" Fengjiu toyed with the wine cup in one hand and slowly said, "You can keep this pill for yourselves or you can spread the news. However, you have to take out something of the same value as this pill in exchange for it. Furthermore, I want to know everything about the Immortal Ascension Stairs in the heart of Peng Lai Immortal Island. Whoever has the most information will have this pill." Information about the Immortal Ascension Stairs? Hearing this, the three old men were stunned. It was already difficult enough to take out something similar to this pill, let alone information about the Immortal Ascension Stairs. However, they had a feeling that the ghost doctor was more interested in information about the Immortal Ascension Stairs than in the exchange of the pills. However, not everyone knew about the Immortal Ascension Stairs. Even the Yi-Bao Pavilion only knew a little about it, and it was not complete. Thinking of this, Steward Lin looked at Fengjiu and asked, "Ghost Doctor, is there a time limit?" Fengjiu glanced at him and took a sip of the wine in his cup. Then, he slowly said, 7 days. After 7 days, if there is nothing I want, then I will take back this pill. Alright, then we'll set a limit of 7 days. However, this pill must be placed in our building for these 7 days. As for the other ghost doctor, you don't have to worry. I'll help Your Excellency Ghost Doctor with the procedures later," Manager Lin said as he glanced at the pill on the table. Seeing this, the two old men prepared to put the pill away. However, at this moment, the man in red stretched out his hand to stop them. "Ghost Doctor, what is the meaning of this?" Manager Lin asked. Chapter 26:19. Hearing this, the three of them stared blankly as they didn't understand what he meant. Until they saw him sealing up that medicinal pill in front of their eyes and turning it into a pill, the three of them then came to a realization. So it was like this. But they didn't expect that he would use this kind of sealing method to preserve the medicinal pill. It had to be said that this ancient method was indeed the best and most convenient method to preserve the medicinal pill. Not only could it seal up the medicinal pill's smell and prevent the medicinal fragrance from dissipating, it could also preserve the medicinal pill for a longer period of time. The two appraisers looked at Fengjiu's method and were secretly shocked. They were appraisers and naturally knew how harsh this method of preserving the medicinal pill was. The seemingly simple sealing of the medicinal pill was easily done by this man. Earlier on, when they heard him say that this medicinal pill was refined by him, they had their suspicions. But at this moment, when they saw his method of sealing the medicinal pill, they already knew that this ghost doctor was indeed the one who refined this 7th-level medicinal pill. Fengjiu placed the sealed medicinal pill on the white jade plate and looked towards Steward Lin. "Go through the procedures." "Alright, Ghost Doctor, please take a seat. I'll be right back," Steward Lin said and turned to leave. Not long later, he came back with the items and completed the procedures for handing over the medicinal pill. Fengjiu stood up to leave and Steward Lin personally sent him out. Only when he saw his figure disappear into the night did he turn around and walk back. Leaving the Yi-Bao house, Fengjiu knew that there were a few tails following behind her. Since she took out that medicinal pill, the people in the Yi-Bao house would definitely think of ways to find out who she was. But was she someone who was easy to follow? After passing through a few streets in the night, she passed by a deserted corner and flashed into her space. Just as she entered her space, 4 black-robed cultivators followed behind her. When they realized that the red figure who had been following them all the way had disappeared, they were all stunned. Where's the person? Why did he disappear? Even his divine sense has disappeared. As they spoke, they looked at each other and searched the surroundings once again. Until they couldn't find that person, they then turned back in the Yi-Bao house. What? Lost him? When Steward Lin heard, he couldn't help but be stunned. His cultivation isn't high. With your cultivation, how could you lose him? He should have discovered us. Moreover, we locked onto his divine consciousness and followed him. However, even his divine consciousness disappeared in the end. We estimate that his strength should not be what the steward saw. Upon hearing those words, Butler Lin's eyes narrowed. It's not the strength that I saw. How is this possible? He found it hard to believe that a heaven-defying alchemist who could refine a seventh-grade medicinal pill would also be a cultivation genius. Manager, do we need to send more people into the city to search? One of them asked. Steward Lin came back to his senses and waved his hand. There's no need. You can leave first. Since he had lost him, he must have been discovered. If he continued to follow him, he was afraid that he would be annoyed. In any case, he would come back 7 days later. At that time, he could just ask around. Moreover, the Immortal Ascension Ladder. Since he asked for information about the Immortal Ascension Stairs, he must be someone who wanted to go to the Immortal Ascension Stairs. Right now, it was better for him to quickly report this matter to his master. Chapter 26:20. When he was about to go to bed, he heard Sha Yutong's voice outside. Fengjiu, you haven't slept yet, have you? I'm coming in. Sha Yutong said and reached out to push the door, but the door couldn't be pushed open. He couldn't help but stare. Why did you lock the door? Why do you lock the door when you sleep in the same yard as me? Are you guarding against thieves? Fengjiu, who was lying in bed, didn't bother to talk to him. Anyway, the door was locked and he couldn't climb the window to get in. After all, with Sha Yutong's temperament, he couldn't climb the window, which was beneath his dignity. Did you know that I was coming, so you locked the door? I know you haven't slept yet. Tell me, where have you been all night? I haven't seen you since the evening. If the housekeeper hadn't said that you went out, I wouldn't have known that you would go out. Sha Yutong asked discontentedly outside. Seeing that Fengjiu didn't come out, he became more and more annoyed. I waited for you in the front yard for so long. How could you avoid me and go back to the yard? If the servants in the mansion hadn't told me, I wouldn't have known that you came back. Tell me, is there a servant like you? Listening to the voice, Fengjiu stretched out his hand to set up a soundproof boundary and fell asleep. Sha Yutong talked to himself outside until his mouth was dry, and then he went back to his room angrily. The next day, when Fengjiu went out of the room, she saw Sha Yutong standing in front of the door and staring at her, so she asked, So early? Are you waiting for me? However, as soon as her voice came out, Sha Yutong was stunned and pointed at her with a look of astonishment. You can talk? Yes. Yesterday, I went out for a stroll in the city and bought a pill to treat my throat. Today my throat is much better. She touched her throat and said thoughtfully. Hearing this, Sha Yutong, who was still angry, stared at her with a strange expression. Why does your voice sound so strange? It's different from mine. Is it strange? I think it's okay. At this time, Sha Yutong remembered that he had stood outside Qin Haodong's room for so long last night and talked for so long without getting any response. He couldn't help but ask angrily, Why didn't you say so last night? You've been talking outside for so long, but you didn't even make a sound. Ah? Did you talk outside my room last night? I don't know. She said innocently, I fell asleep after taking the medicine. I didn't hear anything. Hearing this, Sha Yutong only felt that he had nowhere to vent his anger. He took a deep breath, glared at Fengjiu, and then left. Fengjiu looked at him strangely, rubbed his stomach, and went to the kitchen. Here, she was free. She didn't have to appear in front of the Xie family often. Instead, she could do whatever she wanted. Although she was in charge of the servants in the mansion, they didn't do anything wrong. They all obeyed the rules, so she was happy to be free. On this day, she had nothing to do in the mansion. She just walked around and occasionally practiced with Xia Yutong and his sister in the front yard. Until the day when she was going to the Yuan family's banquet, she was a little busy. She arranged the carriage early in the morning. Today, she served as the coachman. After tidying up her things, she drove the carriage to the door and waited for them. Xiaojiu, do you think my clothes look good today? This is the new set. As soon as Xie Shirsi saw Fengjiu, she quickly ran forward and asked with a happy face. Chapter 26-21. The beautiful woman slowly walked over. She was dressed in a crescent white dress. She was elegant and dignified. Her coiled hair did not have too many accessories. There was only a green hairpin inserted diagonally into her hair. The tassels on her waist swayed gently as she walked. It was very beautiful. The more she looked at the beautiful woman, the more she felt strange. A woman who could not cultivate and would hide in a man's arms in panic when in danger, why did she sometimes show such a mysterious temperament? Yes, she was mysterious. So far, she could not see through the beautiful woman. She always felt that she should not be so simple. Get on the carriage, the beautiful woman said to her son and daughter. Xia Yutong and his wife got on the carriage first, and then Fengjiu helped the beautiful woman get on the carriage. After they all sat down outside and drove the carriage to the Yuan family. The Yuan family was not far from the Xie family. In addition, Fengjiu had explored the road yesterday, so he was familiar with the road conditions. Soon, they arrived at the gate of the Yuan family. However, unexpectedly, there were 7 or 8 carriages in front of them, blocking the road. Madam, we can't get through. The carriage has blocked the road ahead. Do you want to get off here? She looked back and asked. It was only a dozen meters or so from here, so it was convenient to park the carriage aside. Okay, let's get off here. The beautiful woman came out first. After getting off the carriage, she said to Fengjiu, you can park the carriage nearby. Tell the gatekeeper of the Yuan family to keep an eye on it. Later, Shirsi will follow me, and you will follow Yutong. Hearing this, she nodded and said, yes. After parking the carriage, she told the gatekeeper and followed them inside. She followed Xia Yutong like a servant. Looking forward, she saw the beautiful woman walking in front of her chatting with a woman in another carriage, talking and laughing all the way. She retracted her gaze and looked around. She saw that the Yuan family's interior was also very imposing, comparable to the Xie family's main residence. Around the small path leading to the backyard, there were several hidden guards guarding in the dark. The place where the matriarch of the house held the banquet was in the backyard, and the place where the young man and the young woman stayed was separated. When they arrived at the rear courtyard, Fengjiu was not allowed to enter the inner courtyard because of his status as a servant. Thus, the beautiful woman had Fengjiu wait at the courtyard entrance for a while. Not long after she brought her son and daughter in, Xia Yutong came out first after meeting the mistress of the Yuan family. Let's go. It's said that many disciples from the clans in the city have come. Let's go take a look. Xia Yutong came to Fengjiu's side and said. Then he followed a maidservant who led the way to the other side. Fengjiu followed him to another courtyard. When he entered, he saw that there were already more than 10 men in their teens to 20s sitting inside. Behind each of them was a manservant. The arrival of Xia Yutong made those people look back. As the host, Child Ruan saw another guest coming, so he stepped forward with a smile. I'm Child Ruan. I don't know who this is. I'm from the Xie family. My name is Xia Yutong. Xia Yutong looked at the man in front of him. He saw that the man in front of him was about 20 years old, with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He had an outstanding appearance and a slender figure. Chapter 26-22. It turns out to be the young master of the Xie family. You're late. We've all come early. Come and sit down. Seeing this, Sha Yutong went forward with the eldest young master of the Yuan family and sat down in one of the seats, while Feng Jiu stood behind him. There are several young masters of the Xie family. What's your rank? Why haven't I seen you before? A teenager asked, looking at Sha Yutong with some doubts. He knew several direct descendants of the Xie family, but he didn't know the person in front of him. I'm not a direct descendant. I'm a collateral descendant, Sha Yutong said, picking a grape on the small table in front of him to eat. Thinking of Feng Jiu behind him, he picked a bunch and handed it to him. Here. Feng Jiu glanced at him in surprise. Seeing that he was hinting at her, and seeing that the people around her were looking at her in astonishment, she reached out to take it, plucked one, and ate it. How is it? Sweet? Sha Yutong asked, picking another one to eat. Yes. She responded and motioned him to look ahead. Are you a collateral descendant? A teenager looked at him strangely, then looked at the eldest young master of the Yuan family and asked, Didn't Madame Yuan invite the mistress of the Xie family? Why is a collateral descendant here? In the eyes of these direct descendants, the status of the collateral descendant was lower than theirs. The people present were all direct descendants. They didn't expect that the Xie family sent a collateral descendant. The eldest young master of the Yuan family smiled and said, As far as I know, the madam of the Xie family invited by my mother today is a collateral descendant. I heard from my mother that she and the madam of the Xie family are old acquaintances. His voice paused slightly, and he said with a smile, as the saying goes, heroes are not judged by their origin. Whether they are direct descendants or collateral descendants, as long as they are talented, they will be respected. Don't you think so? Hearing this, everyone was silent for a moment and nodded in agreement. Yes, identity is a symbol, but personal strength is also very important. So, everyone's eyes fell on Sha Yutong again. Feng Jiu stood behind Sha Yutong and picked a bunch of grapes to eat. Looking at the eyes of the crowd, he thought to himself, as soon as the eldest son of the Yuan family spoke, he eased the situation. These people are now looking at the strength of Sha Yutong. However, Sha Yutong's strength is above average among his peers. Everyone started chatting, and the atmosphere gradually became harmonious. Feng Jiu stood behind and ate grape. When he finished the grapes in his hand, Sha Yutong in front of him gave him 2 more fruit. Therefore, not only the manservants standing behind other childs showed envy on their faces, but even the childs sitting in front of them were very curious. Yutong, have you always been so nice to your servants? Someone couldn't help but ask. From the moment he sat down until now, he saw that the servant behind him had been eating fruits. Of course not. He's different, Sha Yutong said. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but ask, how is he different? There doesn't seem to be anything outstanding about him. A teenager couldn't help laughing. Ha ha ha, how is he not outstanding? Look at this servant, he hasn't stopped eating since just now. He eats whatever Yutong gives him. He has eaten so much. Tell me, which servant can eat as much as him? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.